Imagine someone tells you, there are no real non-believers. Deep down, everyone knows God exists. They just choose to reject him. This response is often used to dismiss the non-resistant non-belief argument, a powerful challenge to belief in an all-loving, all-powerful God. Philosopher J.L. Schellenberg famously asks, if God wants a personal relationship with every human being, why are there so many sincere non-believers? People who aren't rebelling or angry, they just don't find the evidence convincing. To dodge this question, some believers argue that these people are secretly resisting God. Consciously or unconsciously, they're holding God at arm's length. But today I want to walk you through a version of the non-resistant non-belief argument that makes the counterclaim, secretly they do resist, untenable. Let's start with a story. There's this young man called Daniel. Daniel has Down syndrome. He's been raised in a secular, non-believing household with loving parents, and, like most of us, he adopts the worldview of those around him. Because of Daniel's cognitive profile, he doesn't ponder theological questions. He doesn't grasp abstract metaphysical concepts or evaluate complex arguments for and against God's existence. He isn't resisting. He's simply never crossed that bridge. Now, most theists would say Daniel isn't culpable for his lack of belief. He's like a child. God wouldn't expect belief from someone without the cognitive tools to evaluate these matters. And that's a fair point, but here's where the problem begins. Where do you draw the line? What about someone on the autism spectrum who may struggle with metaphor and takes things literally, or who naturally underdetects agency in the environment and may struggle with concepts like God is love, you just need faith, or look at the trees? What about someone with schizophrenia, who hears voices and has learned through painful experience not to trust the content of their own thoughts? What about someone with ADHD whose executive functioning makes it hard to hold multiple lines of reasoning in their mind, let alone engage with abstract theological reasoning? What about someone with major depression, whose inner life may be so blunted that feelings like wonder, gratitude, and joy, often seen as gateways to God, are simply out of reach? And what about people whose minds change significantly over time? Those with early onset dementia, those recovering from brain injuries, or those with bipolar disorder who alternate between states of clarity and confusion. Are these people resisting God? If not, are they exempt? And if so, exactly where on the cognitive spectrum does someone become accountable for their non-belief? No one can give a consistent principal answer to this. Some believers may say, well, God judges the heart. It's not about intelligence, it's about sincerity. But sincerity only matters if you can engage with the idea of God in the first place. If you can't process metaphor or sustain attention or trust your thoughts in the same way as others, how can you sincerely come to belief? Other believers might say, God will sort it out in the end. But this just concedes the point, that non-belief doesn't always mean resistance. So now we're admitting that some non-believers aren't resisting, which means divine hiddenness is still unexplained. And here's a deeper issue. If salvation or divine relationship is of infinite value, and if God is all-powerful and all-loving, then why not create all human beings with just enough limitation to be exempt? Why not make us all like Daniel? Is Daniel not equally valuable and precious as anyone else? He too lives in a free will world, doesn't he? So why create billions of people whose salvation hinges on belief, knowing that belief is unevenly distributed and heavily influenced by cognitive ability, geography, and upbringing? This makes salvation a cosmic lottery, not the gift of a loving God. Now, at this point, some may say, But if everyone were cognitively limited to that level, society wouldn't function. Civilization requires more capable minds. But that objection assumes that our current society, our current world, is the only way a world could be. Remember, you are positing an omnipotent God being, a God who could create any possible world. Why not design a world where people like Daniel could thrive? A world tailored to their abilities, where love, joy, relationship, and even moral growth are still possible, just without the stakes of eternal punishment based on beliefs that were never truly accessible. If this God can create galaxies, he can create societies where everyone is below the threshold of this accountability, and it still works. So appealing to social functionality in this world doesn't solve the problem. It only shows the limits of human imagination, not divine power. And let's be clear, this isn't just about clinical diagnoses. Human cognition exists on a vast complex spectrum, and belief, especially belief in invisible transcendent entities, depends on certain cognitive traits. And certain cognitive profiles, not just official diagnoses, will naturally predispose someone either toward belief or toward non-belief. If belief is required for salvation, and those cognitive capacities vary wildly through no fault of our own, then the system is neither fair nor loving. You can't claim that all non-belief is resistant while admitting there are people for whom belief is never even a live option. That's not about rebellion, it's about how brains are wired. If even one person, just one, is non-resistant and yet left in the dark, then the idea of a perfectly loving God is in serious trouble. And given all the cognitive profiles in all the social contexts out there, non-resistant non-belief is not merely possible, it is statistically inevitable. Thanks for watching. If this made you think, give it a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.